this pyramidical hierarchical structure of is actually, a lot of it has been imposed by foreigners describing India. So one of the first accounts is Al-Biruni, then Abul Fadl under Akbar does it, because remember, the Mughals are primarily foreigners at that point, and they're trying to describe India like this strange place which they have to codify and taxonomize, which the British do later in the 18th and 19th century also. So these are foreigner gazes on India in which they're trying to understand the complexity of millions of people's lives in an extremely diverse country. And they do it in the simplest and most rudimentary form. And unfortunately, the Indian state and all Indian pedagogy about and academic attempts about India adopt those foreign descriptions of what India is as being the truth about India.
You have actually spoken about the fact that Hinduism has myriads of scriptural texts, none of which mention caste, but some do refer to Varna. To what extent did these have a bearing on the ground reality of how society was organized before the colonizers arrived, either the Mughals or the British?
Panditji will, of course, expand on it much better because he will probably know more about Hindu texts than I do. But I think from an academic point of view, it's really important to understand that Hinduism does not have a scripture in the sense of the Abrahamic religions, that there is no one book that you can call upon that this is the law book of the Hindus. There isn't. And trying to draw a parallel between that, which was the basis of the Hindu code of law that the British formulated, they came upon the Manusmriti as being, oh, this must be the Hindu book of law, that this is the way the Hindus live. But actually, that is completely untrue. Historically, there's no sort of mention of the Manusmriti being used as a source of authority for imposing social order in India. And it may have been true in Bengal at some point, because Bengal, by the time the British were making laws about India, was not very Indian at all, because it had become this interlocutor-led society. Because I don't know how many of the readers will know that the British, because the Diwani of Bengal was one of the first land conquests by the British in the 18th century, and the Battle of Plassey is well known, and all of that. But one of the things they tried to do was to reorganize the way land holdings worked in Bengal. And they tried to replicate the British countryside feudal system. So the zamindars became essentially direct sort of parallels of aristocrats in Britain, including sort of having servitude to a king. This is not the way traditional zamindari, traditional landholding works in India. In the Kshatriya-led order, which is the people who hold the right to rule in India, and I will talk about who is a Kshatriya later on, they make the rules about society. They sort of talk to Brahmins and figure out, hey, what did this person say about it? What did that person say about it? And what applies to the modern day. But nowhere in India does a Brahmin sit and say, hey, you're going to make this, you're going to live like this. Nowhere. Brahmins are not power holders. And where some person who was born a Brahmin happens to be a power holder, which is the case in the Peshwas in 18th century India, or the Brahmin rulers of Banaras, for example, we see that they are deemed to be Kshatriya because they are assuming Kshatriya roles. They are fighting and ruling, which are not Brahmin activities. So they are assuming Kshatriya roles, and they're assumed to live. They are expected to live by the Kshatriya codes that exist in the land. Well, so I don't know whether that was meandering, but the takeaway should be that there are many, many smritis in India, not just the Manusmriti, and none of them governed how actually laws were written, made, and followed in Indian principalities and Indian ruled states.
Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.